What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Gen Z Money Podcast, where we turn financial peace to your reality. I'm your host, James Bowman, and today's episode, guys, this one really hits home, right? I talked to Lawrence today in this interview from the Neighborhood Finance Guy, and we go really deep into the Black culture when it comes around money, and we compare the Black culture to the Asian culture, to the Hispanic culture, to the white culture, and we really break down the reasons why it seems to be really hard for the Black culture to get their financial footing, right? We bring out the statistics, we bring out the median incomes, we bring out so many good numbers, and we kind of throw our ideas together to just figure out what is really going on and how do we change it, right? Like, a big part of this podcast is helping the Black community, people that I'm surrounded by, get their financial footing, get that financial literacy to start building generational wealth, which we have done very little of, up to today. So I really hope that you guys enjoy this episode. And like I said, this was going to be a little bit different, right? You might get offended by some of the things that we say, and that's okay. Just think about what we actually say and think if it relates to you and if you can change. But I'm not going to give too much away, guys. Let's go ahead and just jump right into the interview. What's going on, Lawrence? Welcome to the Gen Z Money Podcast. How you doing today, man?
I'm doing fantastic as always. It's an honor and a privilege to be here on this honorable stage. I heard you in the Army, so I was kind of like, all right, it's all right. It's not the Marine Corps, but it's good
relax,
enough.
Man. Relax. You
can't come at me like that. I have to take the shots. I got to. It's the Marines. It's what we do. It's what we do.
Look, there's a reason the Army is the biggest branch, right? But we ain't gonna go there, man. We ain't gonna go there. But
it's all peace. Olive branches, peace, man, peace.
Peace. We all fight in the same fight.
Mm-hmm.
But I really appreciate you, man. The honor is really all mine. You coming on this morning and having a conversation, because I'm gonna be honest with listeners. This is gonna be a hard conversation, especially for people who look like us. Time to hold each other accountable and really get down to what we need, as a society for us. So, Lawrence, let's just go ahead and start way back from the basics. Mm-hmm. Little Lawrence, 5 years old, 7 years old, growing up, running around, how was money talked about and viewed as you grew up?
All right, let's see, little Lawrence. So let me take everybody back a little bit. I was actually born in the 80s. My mom could not take care of, my dad left my mom, like literally pregnant with me. He left her, and she couldn't figure out exactly what to do. So she decided to send me and my sister to live in Haiti. So I actually had no real conceivable understanding of who my parents were. And ever since I was like 11 months old, like literally have no idea who they are, like till like 9 years old. So my conception of money was actually growing up in Haiti itself, in the capital, chilling with my aunts and realizing that, hey, there's not a lot of money to go around, but we got to make do. We got to be resourceful. One of the things that my family did, at least for a short time, they had like a cafe, a small cafe. And, when you're a kid, you see everybody kind of get up in the morning, go somewhere, loading, unloading trucks, Coca-Cola bottles, so on and so forth. I just wanted to help. But then they also carried like this little book that they had. It was a ledger. At the time, I didn't know what it was. I just saw that it was numbers, and it was like, that's how it was written in there. And I flipped through it trying to understand, because, when you're a kid, you're trying to learn words, and you're like, this is nothing but numbers in here. And then I put two and two together, like these were important for some reason. There's a reason why people write them down, people kind of track them. And ultimately, I figured out that was the language of money. Like, it's not just about, money coming in. It's also tracking money going out and ensuring that you have enough to take care of the family. If anything, that's what the first spark to me. And I was like, you know what? I need to start stacking my money. So I started saving my little, every dollar I had that they were giving me to kind of like go to school. When you're 6 years old, they give you like a couple dollars. You got to travel all around the city to get to your school. The whole walking uphill was my actual story. Like, instead of actually hitchhiking or kind of paying, I just kind of kept on walking, and I saved the money because I thought that was the way that I needed to be. So for me, my money stories probably started way back when I was like, I got to be like 5 when they hit me. I was like, this is cool.
Well, but that's interesting though, because it sounds like your family they were entrepreneurs, they owned stuff. And so you already kind of started let me kind of say this.
I gotta caveat this. Like, it's not like they were entrepreneurs, like this new term that we have in today's day, like, hey, be an entrepreneur. That's not what it is. When you live overseas, everybody works, everybody grinds, everybody hustles. Before hustling was cool in the US, this is what everybody does around the world, period. It wasn't because like this is extra income. This is because income we needed. It's almost like this job is it's almost like another job that you have to have in order for you to bring in ends meet, if that makes sense.
So you would call it self-employed?
Yes,
Because
yes.
there's definitely a difference between being self-employed and being an entrepreneur. In my opinion, when you're self-employed, you own your own job. Is that kind of basically what it was?
Yeah, you own your job, but eventually they kind of like broke it down. But it's just hard to explain to people that haven't been overseas that sometimes people are just working because you have to work. That means that there's no side anything. There's not a lot of jobs to go around. There's high unemployment rates all over the place. So you have to create your own thing. But it's not because of some kind of I'm just gonna be on a yacht, hey, I'm popping bottles and this is how entrepreneurs is. Nah, this is just the grind. This is the normal ass grind. If I had to say the word ass.
No, you're good, man. You're good. Okay, so you're saving this money as a child, this couple dollars here and there. You're walking uphill in the snow both ways to get to and from school, and you're in your own grind trying to get your education. Were there any like significant, as you grew older, any significant money mistakes that you were making as you were growing up, whether it's accumulating debt or just buying stupid crap?
Oh yeah, I think a lot of it came right after the Marine Corps. I went to college, and that's when I started kind of like, that's the point you start expressing yourself, trying to figure out who you are. So you're buying things to kind of fit that void. Like, do I need stereos? Because everybody seems to have a stereo system, like one of those like 5 pieces, whatever it is in their crib. I gotta go get me one. Barely use that thing. Everybody had like a car, so I had to go get me a car. I got a used car. But then I was like, I didn't like it anymore. I'm going to buy this next car. So I think my biggest mistakes were, just buying the things to kind of make me feel like I fit in. And it was actually costing me a lot. Going out, every once in a while, getting food all over the place. That was like the biggest money mistake. Like in retrospect, that was like the biggest money mistake on top of the student loans and not doing well in school. So there's a whole bunch of stuff that I like did do well. And I wasn't paying attention. I was just letting it ride. Like, the thoughts in your mind that says, hey, you might not want to do this. It's like, no, let it ride. YOLO. Let's go.
Yeah, YOLO, I'll figure it out later, man.
Like YOLO precedes all bad decisions. Let's go.
All right. So what do you remember there being a point where you realized like, okay, now it's time to start living for tomorrow instead of living for today? Was there a tipping point? What was that?
There was a tipping point. It was 2012. The entire year of 2012 was a terrible year for me. If 2020 was like a shocker for a lot of people, imagine that times 2 or 3 for me in 2012. When I mean everything went sideways, it went sideways. I had to get my 4 wisdom teeth pulled out. And because I didn't have dental insurance. 2, I didn't have the actual extra cash to pay for the drugs. So I went cold turkey. I went in there. He's like, hey, what's the cheaper alternative? He said local anesthesia. They pop that sucker in and they start like, drilling and cutting. I felt it all the way through. On top of that, somebody hit my car like maybe a couple weeks later. I didn't even do it. Somebody hit it. So I had to figure that out. I had to track that person down, trying to get my car repaired just to the point where it's functional again. On top of that, my girlfriend at the time, she said, I think she was having a mental breakdown. And we went to a restaurant where I was putting it on credit too. It was like I went to a restaurant, their favorite night, whatever it is. And she was just kind of like bashing me. And she said, we will never be rich, like wealthy people, blah, 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 blah. To be rich, this is your lot in life. This is where you're going to be. And I kept on looking at her, not to add animosity. My mind was like, well, technically there's, we could do a lot of things here. We could make it happen. But then I was surrounded by other people saying the same thing. My friends at my home, we had like a 4-bedroom, 4-bath, sitting there chilling. Some people would come in and say, well, we can't afford to invest. We can't do this. We can't do that. And I was like, well, technically I don't know why we can't. So I went back to my room. I started clanking around like, hey, how much money do I spend, per month on food? That was just a general, thing. I put it on mint.com. I found out I was spending around like $364 a month on food. What was I eating? It wasn't steak and lobster. It wasn't anything special. It was just a lot of money on food. When I ran the numbers for the entire home per month, we were spending $2,400 per month on food and drinks, whatever it was. That's our dining. So every time that we said that we didn't have money to invest, well, technically we did. We were just mismanaging the hell out of those funds. So to me, that year was like an eye opener. It's like, well, at this point, I have $80,000 worth of student loan debt. I have $5,000 worth of credit cards, debt, all of it rolling. And the job that I picked up was making $23,000 before taxes. That means every month they were paying me just $1,000. Why I know every month? Because they only paid us once a month.
Like once that the Marines?
Like, no, that was like the Florida system. They just like the Florida government system paid you one time a month. It was the wildest thing I ever seen. Cause I thought I was gonna get paid twice a week. Nah, man. It was just one time. And you just when that one time hit, you better make sure that you make that thing ride out the entire 30 days.
Man, that is crazy to think that you had over $100,000 in total debt, but you're making $23K before taxes.
Before tax.
So, okay, you're looking at this mountain. Like, what do you do? Like, because to me, that seems at that point hopeless. If I were in that position, I would seem absolutely hopeless. And there's probably people out there that are in that spot right now where, their debt is 4 times their annual income. What did you do?
And I think that's where it happens, the mindset shift. Like there's some people that naturally their instinct is to say, hey, everything is against me, the world's against me, so on and so forth. But I'm the kind of person, so it's what are my cards? I know what the world or the external, issues that I have, that's fine. But what are my internal issues? So I turned inwardly. I started figuring out like, well, I'm making 23K, but I saw my grandmother who only made in her lifetime, probably 16K a year, raised like 6 or 7 adults in her house. On top of that, she was beloved by the community because she always gave back, so on and so forth. And I'm like, how does this woman make it happen? And I'm just one guy feeding myself and I just can't make it happen. So I started thinking back all the memories. I'm one of those people that have an active memory of remembering all the stuff that happened in the past. And I was like, you know what? My grandmother and my family, they always meal prep. Before it was cool, before that word was a buzzword, that's all we did. We bulk cook. We meal prepped. I'm like, I started doing that. I started bulk cooking. I started meal prepping. I started doing the buy one, get one free stuff, lowering that amount. So I started noticing that there's things that the past could tell you about where you're going. And a lot of the older people always kind of did those things. That's why they weren't always, they might not have made a lot of money, but they were never really broke. They were always like ahead of the curve. They made deals. They made concessions. They worked with other people. They traded services. Another thing that my grandmother did, she did a lot of side hustling. One of them was waking up in the morning at 4 a.m., creating like rum. That's what she was doing. She was making bottled rum. And I woke up, I stayed up that night to figure out who was gonna wake up in the morning. And my grandmother was up at 4 a.m. in the morning, knocking it out. So I started changing the way I lived. That means, hey, not staying up super late at night, burning the electricity, burning my time or whatever, waking up in the morning, go get some exercise. So I stopped feeling so like sluggish. And also like the exercise is interesting because it also changes the chemistry in your brain. It makes you think things are more and more possible. So you stop, living in this like, everything sucks, everything is whatever. That's also because you feel like crap. So I started feeling more energized. And with that energy, I started fixating myself on like, what should I do with this extra money? The money that I had to make sure that I was paying down my credit card debts as soon as I got them, because that was the biggest thing. Because knocking out your high interest credit card debt is the thing that's taxing you. So I had to get rid of that. And I started making do with whatever I had left, meaning that, hey, I wasn't giving everybody rides no more. I wasn't doing all this extra stuff on the side. I was making sure I was cooking in bulk. Even though everybody else was eating at their crib, like the stuff that I cooked in bulk, it made it better for everybody to understand that it's not like we can't just keep going out and spending our money.
You know what, man, you hit on so many different things. I really want to reiterate some of these things. So what you're talking about, what you grew up seeing, you're talking about like millionaire habits. For example, meal prepping. Like Matthew Meyer has a book. I had him on a podcast. I think it was episode 15. And the title of the book, or in the title of the book, it was Millionaires Eat Leftovers.
Yeah.
And it's such a great teaching tool that, even the wealthiest people aren't cooking every single day, consuming every single day. They're always meal prepping. They're finding ways to create extra income, which you talked about. They're learning to say no, because you can give yourself into poverty and people don't realize that. but also finding ways to give back without it being, financially. For example, you just said that you would bulk meal prep, but the whole house would eat it. So not only are you saving money, but you're actually giving your time and your resources to help others save money. And so these are habits that wealthy people find ways to create. And then we don't even have to get into exercising, because we all know exercising does so many things to your body, whether it's your brain chemistry and your attitude, that it produces such a positive attributes to your lifestyle. So I really love you bringing up each of those habits, because these are things that everyone can do. Everyone can start meal prepping, like make a meal on Monday. You're eating it Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, maybe Thursday. Create extra income, wake up an hour early and do something you're skilled at that create income, to get out of that rat wheel effect. But also, don't create that extra income to spend it, right? Create that extra income in order to build for your future and catapult you forward, whether it's paying off debt, all these things. So it's awesome. And then also, just real quick, you mentioned mint.com earlier, which I think is just a phenomenal resource for listeners.
It's free.
It's free 99. Like, you can't beat it. And there's so many different, but these things are awesome because you can integrate them into your bank account where you don't have to be transferring, but it just helps you get control of what's coming in and what's going out, which was one of your main points, when we began the podcast. So I just want to point out all these things, because these are things that, yes, you're going to take, okay, you lose an hour of sleep. No, just go to bed an hour earlier, right?
Yeah.
Like make sacrifices. Like me recently, I just started getting back into going to the gym. So I wake up 3:30 every morning, go to the gym for an hour. Then I go to work and do all these things. And I've only been doing it for like a month or so, but I'm still feeling like better throughout the day and getting home and feeling more productive throughout life. So I love everything that you just said, man.
Yeah,
so
people don't really pay attention to those little things, and those things create opportunities. For example, one of those things I did around that time, there was a bike that I found. I was like, it was a random bike, hey, maybe I stole it, I don't know. But I knew it was a bike. It was a road bike, and I was like, all right, cool. I switched out the handles, I fixed on it, I worked on it on the side, and I started biking a little bit. And then one day I said, you know what, I heard about this bike trail that goes from this city to this other city, and it's like a straight bike trail. It's like 75 miles, and I'm going to do it. And one of those things that when you're not doing a lot in your life, that's the whole point. You're not doing a lot of everything. So at that point, I was like, you know what, I'm going to do it. The next morning, or I told my buddies that 2 weeks ahead. And that same morning, the night before, I stayed up playing video game, kicking it, whatever. And that morning I woke up, it was like 10 a.m. I was like, shoot. My other buddy walked in. He's like, yo, I thought you were supposed to go on the bike ride. And I was like, yeah, I woke up too late. I literally started telling myself this. And at the moment he walked away, you could tell his disappointment in his face, because everybody's looking also at you to see, do you commit to what you say you're going to do? Because it's going to be important, because it's going to change them as well. Because everybody's looking to see, they want to change, but they're also looking at you to say, are you ready? Are you changing so I could change too? Or blah, blah. It works in this weird dynamic. Then I thought to myself, you know what? I'm going to go do it. Midday, I got on the bike. I think I bought like a Gatorade, and I started biking. I started regretting it by 5 miles in, but I'm just saying, when the bugs hit in your face and whatever, you realize you need to have a helmet, a visor, and the whole outfit. It makes sense. But I did the entire 75 miles bike ride back and front. It was, by the end, I was walking to the point where every time you get off to start walking, you're moving so slow that you have to get back on the bike to bike. And then at some point, I got to the end, and I was crawling upstairs. That's how much my legs would just completely give out. And by the time I got back in the seat, the same couch seat that he saw me at, like, it's like, hey man, where were you? I said, I did the bike ride. And he's like, oh shoot, how was it? It was terrifying, but it was great. And to this day, it was one of the best things I've done in my life, because it really showed me that we avoid doing hard things in society now. We truly avoid it. We avoid it because we like easy. We avoid it because we don't want to change.
God, man, I really can't express the power of what you just said, because I reiterate this to everyone I meet. It's like, it's okay to make a promise to someone else and to let them down. We're kind of used to that at this point in society. Like, everybody's broken a promise to you. But once you start keeping promises you make yourself, I mean, the power that you get back into your life. And a prime example of this, I heard this on the Bigger Pockets podcast, Brandon Turner, I'll never forget it. The prime example is alarm clocks. Why would you set an alarm clock for 4:30 in the morning if you know you're not going to get up till 5? That you're setting a promise for yourself and then you're breaking it. And people do that every single morning. They set 5, 6, 7 alarms every morning and they get up on the last one, or they snooze it 100 times. That's literally you making a promise to yourself and then failing to keep it. And so since I heard that, I set one alarm in the morning. And half of that is, if I sleep through this alarm, my day, I'm not going to wake up till like 7, right? So in my head, I know like I have to get up as soon as I hear the alarm. There is no snooze button. It is what it is, one alarm. But again, that's just something that I added into my life, that I can keep that promise to myself. And I continue to do that, and it makes me feel better, and it also holds me accountable to other people. So you going on that bike ride, even you woke up late, you weren't properly geared, even though you didn't figure out till you were on the bike ride, right?
Oh
But
yeah, I used to make fun of those people too. Like, look at that idiot with the visor. Oh, when a couple of bugs hit you in the eyes, you figure out why the visor is important.
yeah, but it's like you had all of the excuses in the world why you didn't have to go on the bike ride that day. But not only seeing the disappointment on the other's face when they're like, oh man, I was really looking forward to you completing that, but you kept the promise to yourself regardless of how hard it was. And you can apply that to any portion of your life. You can apply that to your finances. You can apply that to your mental health. You can apply that to your physical health, your emotional, your spiritual health. Any portion of life you can apply the same principle to. So that's an amazing, amazing story that you shared, man. And I really hope people pick up the reason for the story, the power in that story, that even if you don't feel like it, even if, like, people ask, well, how do you stay motivated going to the gym? I don't. I wake up pissed because I have to go to the gym, but I do it anyways because I made the promise to myself. Man, that's powerful. So Lawrence, let's get into some of the posts you make, right? Because you make some pretty controversial posts on your Instagram. And I use controversial very loosely because it doesn't matter how I feel about the post. If they're accurate, they're accurate. So one post, which was absolutely staggering to me, is that you posted that Black people have the highest poverty rate at 19.5%. And that shocked me because I started going around, not literally, but figuratively, and 1 of 5 Black people I've interacted with or that I know is living in poverty. And that's I use that as fuel for this podcast and for the financial coaching, financial literacy I'm putting out, because we know that we haven't had the perfect past, right? We've had to build on certain things. So, but with that being said, there was another post. I'm just going to link these two together before I start asking you some questions on it to cover it. And also, you made a post about the median household income of 2020. Asian median household income was 95,000. White median income was 75,000. Hispanic median income was 55,000. And Black median income was 45,000. So we are at the lowest median income of 2020. That could have changed by 2021, 2022.
No. It kind of got worse.
Man.
It's not going to change to get better. It gets worse.
Dang that. So first question on these stats, on these statistics, like, with these statistics, we can tell that financial literacy in the Black community is lower than the other races, because your household income has many factors, whether it's your negotiation skills, your actual hard skills, your job, your career choice, your family structure choice, and all these being said. So what are some of the common mistakes that you're seeing in general in our community that are leading us down the path of, high poverty rates and low median income in households?
All right, let's see. For what I have to backtrack just a bit and just say that I don't agree that we have a lower financial literacy rate in the Black community. I think 9 times out of 10, there is a lot of poor people, but we have a lot of very resourceful people. If anything, we have a lack of money management, I guess, skills and skill set. Fine, I get it's kind of weird to say, but it's yes or no ish, and it's kind of muddled because there's a lot of other communities that do struggle with financial literacy to the point that's why we have all these podcasts that's available. That's why we have all these styles and different people that comes out of nowhere, because everybody's struggling with trying to make a way out of no way in the US. I think for the Black community, what the biggest factors is it shows our priorities as a community. That's what it really shows. Like the lack of median household income, our wealth, where our wealth is being pushed. Because even recently, they dropped yet again. Every year they do it. They shared that the Black household spends around $1.6 trillion. Just that's how much we spend. So we have money. How we use the money is pretty much the problematic aspect, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. Okay. Well, before you go any
Yeah.
further, I want to be very clear on this because
Yeah, I'm not putting it on you. I'm just saying, like, this is the idea.
no, because I love this. I love this conversation. So you said that it's financial management and not financial literacy. So what you think is we have the literacy, but we're making the wrong choices, or do you think we don't
No.
know, we are not educated on the choices we're making?
Oh, it's a combination of both. Like
Okay.
majority of Americans, no matter if you're Black, white, indifferent, or purple, it doesn't matter, struggle with financial literacy. That's a big issue in America, period. That's the biggest thing I would say. It's not just one is better than the other. It's just like some people have other ways that they manage wealth that's different. What I say to this is that for Black people, Black households, our priorities aren't aligned. And the big interest of these numbers is like you see that the last couple of 20 years or so, Hispanic communities and households has been making stride. They actually were below Black households, but they started going higher and higher as far as medium income as well as wealth. Why are they doing that? Because Hispanic communities are very centered on family. And because they're centered on family, they buy homes. That's where they double down on every time. You never, I'm from Miami. Like there's never a time that there's not a party at a Hispanic person's household. It's just always, and it's always a get together because all the family members coming in, that's why they're doing. So their priorities puts them in line with buying homes and assets that's going to grow with them. The white priorities is to really kind of like push the envelope, make as much wealth as possible. So they're aligned priorities wise with the financial aspects of this society. Asian communities are very big on being, education and high income jobs. So therefore, that's why you're going to see that how their household income kind of skew upwards over time, and they're far beyond exceed everybody else. On top of that, they're gaining on wealth as well. The reason they're doing that because their priorities themselves align. Black communities' priorities, if I had to be honest, it just ain't there. We like to be showy people. We're very much outwardly expressive to how we are, and we're also very big givers in the sense of like we give to families all the time. Like we're not paying attention to where money coming in and where money's going, so we just like, hey, I'm just gonna give. Oh, we're gonna go to this party, I'm paid. Like, we're going to this thing over here, I'm paid. So we're very expressive, but we spend all our money on non-income producing assets. That means we're not buying homes as much anymore. The only real part of our community that buys homes is Black boomers. They bought homes, they kept their homes, so on and so forth. But the next generations onwards been struggling with the idea of even owning a home. Makes no sense, but they just are like, I don't know if I should rent or buy a home. What? Like, what's going on with you? Or we struggle with some fundamentals. Like we're the only community, in far as I could see, that'd be like, well, I don't know if college is for everyone. What? Like, why is everybody else trying to go to college, but you're the only one debating if it's a thing or not, if it's important or not? It's not to say that it's the only means of education, but for you to kind of debate it is kind of crazy on itself. So all of our priorities are not aligned with what is truly important, which is to one, get better education, get into high income producing jobs, buy homes, and get married. All these four things tend to be the key markers of a very wealthy society. And these are things that we're not doing well. We see the rate of single households in the Black community is always kind of trending upwards more than others. There's also, we're not getting, there's so many other things. The McKinsey and Company report that dropped in 2020 even discussed how we are overrepresented in lower paying jobs. That means a lot of times the people are going to school, they're taking the easier route. Let me be social worker, let me go to education. It's all these little things that we're not pushing the envelope, and it shows in the total, the back end, if that makes sense.
Okay. Yeah, you just hit on a bunch of topics.
Oh yeah, man.
But I love this because you're hitting on so many relevant topics. So you went through the priorities of, the Asian community, the white community, Hispanic community, Black community. And I have no gripe about anything you said, at least from my perspective. You're 100% accurate. We prioritize displayed wealth, we prioritize giving, and unfortunately, marriage is not a priority for our community for the most part, at least in the earlier stages of life. So there was two things about college, which I want to make a note about one of them before I continue. So the first one, right? You were talking about, how Black people like to debate whether college is worth going to or not. And I think that conversation is so important because I talk about it a lot. Like, everyone doesn't need to go to college, but you should never be debating, should I go to college or not? The debate should always be, should I go to college or should I do this other thing? So when you compare going to college to nothing, that is the absolute wrong debate. But for example, if you're going into the military, right, you say, should I go to college or should I go to the military? And then you'll realize you can do both and all that good stuff. But I do agree with what you're saying, is like, the debate should never be, should I go to college or not? It should be, should I go to college or should I go down this other avenue of career path? The second thing, which I came to this knowledge fairly recently, that Black women going to college has increased substantially over the last decade. And you talked about how we end up going into lower paying career paths like social workers or nonprofit work and things like that. Do you think that is our way as Black people of satisfying that giving need in our culture? Because you already talked about giving being a priority. Do you think that Black people are giving too much of their time to these low career or low paying career choices like social working, or even I hate to say teachers are low paying, but relative to the rest of the world, teachers are on the lower salary and things like that?
Yeah, I think it brought up this idea of the poverty mindset. I think that's kind of where we are still at as a community, in the sense that there's still this idea that if you make certain amount of money, then for some reason you're evil. And I think that's really part of the problem. If you go to college, on the scale of the cultural zeitgeist, as we call it, it's like, oh, are you trying to be white? Are you trying to speak white? Are you trying to, all these really messed up ideas that doesn't make any sense. And I always try to push back to people. It's like, is everything about success only based on whiteness? And if that's the case, then of course your own people, your own psychology, your subconscious would tell you not to strive for this, because obviously it's for somebody else, not for you. So we have an entire community that still haven't made peace with a lot of the financial trauma that was impacted upon them based on being enslaved for very long, Jim Crow, so on and so forth. We have all of these issues that are still playing in our heads that keep us in a space in which is like, no, we don't want to try too hard. You want to try, but not too hard. Like you don't want, and then you want to be challenged and then to fail, and then to also kind of like have to go back to your own community and say you failed at this thing called college. Because even when I was in college, my cousin would call me, or It's like, oh, you're still doing this college thing? Oh man, like, she just kept on like, oh, Lawrence is never gonna get out of school. She, in her mind, this person that never really went to college, she was trying to really negate my experience and everything I was doing there. It was one of those wildest things. But to your point, you're 100% correct. It's not the question of do you go to college or not. Is the question, what are you doing? What are your resources? Do you need to go to, do you go to let's call it military? Do you get a trade school? Do you decide to go to community college instead? Do you plan out your way? Which I think that's the thing. Like, how do we plan? And I think that's where we falter as a community, because we have no plan. We generally kind of wing it. Like, some people that went to college, like I did, I was winging it. The first time I went to Florida State was the first time I actually landed in Florida State. I never traveled around to see what the colleges were offering. I didn't do a lot of this stuff. I just had to go to school, and I just ended up there. The first major I picked was criminology, because I was like, yeah, I'm here. Maybe I'll be a cop. I don't know. Boom. There was no plan. There was no understanding, and that philosophy, you will always fail. And I think that's where we falter as a people. Our families lack planning. Like, your mom and dad be like, I don't know. Like, you ask them what their retirement savings are. They don't really know. They don't know how much they're spending in a month. They don't know how much money they're bringing in. They don't have any goals and aspirations. It's the weirdest thing to ask people. They just don't have it. They've never written it down. They never thought it through. They never think about the different details. And by that definition, this is why you have a household with less than $44,000 worth of, because we're getting by. We're getting by to get by. And that's not a way that you become wealthy.
It's so crazy that you said that, because someone once told me, I like to bring this up. I don't put them out on the spot because, whatever. But somebody told me once, is like, oh, you're doing that investing stuff. Oh, James is doing that white people stuff. And I'm telling you, man, that stuck with me so hard, because of course it was a Black person from our community, but I didn't even get angry. I didn't get judgmental. I'm like, man, I feel bad for them. I feel bad that they think that being successful, that building wealth is only white people stuff, that Black people cannot do it too. So it's crazy that you bring up that example, because I've literally had it happen to me, and it's sad. And another thing, what you brought up, talking to your parents about, like, saving for retirement or creating a budget. Our people love to say, man, Lawrence, you better stop pocket watching. Why you got to worry about how much I got in my retirement account, man? Like, what, we're going to come rob you? Like, no, man, we want the best for you. We're not hating because you have less than us. We want you to have just as much as us, if not more. So that's another saying that I hear so much, like, oh, James, why are you pocket watching? It's like, no. If you tell me that you make enough money to never have to save for retirement, then you got to be making like $500,000 or more a year, right? Mm-hmm. Because that's something very stupid to say, like, oh, I make so much that I don't have to worry about retirement. So it's like, so if I ask you, okay, well, how much do you make a year? That's not me pocket watching. I'm trying to get like you, my boy. Like,
let me know. Let me know.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, I'm trying to help you, and you ain't even trying to help me. So it's just, man, it's crazy. And I love that you bring it up, because it is so prevalent, among Black people. And it is still a taboo topic. Like, you don't talk about money with your children. Even if your child is 30 years old, 40 years old, you still don't talk about money with them. And it's absolutely ridiculous. And we look at each other and we say, I want the best for my child. I don't want my child to grow up to be like me. I want my child to grow up and be better than me. But we won't talk to them about money. We won't tell them the money mistakes that we made so they don't make them. So it's very hypocritical. For at least that's what my parents told me. I want you to be better than me, but you didn't teach me, at least financially, how to be better than you. You just taught me. You didn't teach me anything about it. So
to double down on that one, like, I bought my home in 2016, and afterwards, maybe like a year later, my sister's like, yeah, I bought a home, and my mortgage is underwater. I'm like, what do you mean underwater? I actually didn't even understand that concept. Like, what do you mean underwater? Like, there's water in the house? Like, what's going on? It turns out, like, when she bought it too high, and then the market tanked. And when the market tanked, the index never came back. So she bought it for probably 200 stacks, and it's still only worth 125. So she's been in that kind of situation. And it's funny because she never told me this. A person that is going to go through this path of life, as an older sister, I would figure that she would have just told me. And it turns out she never told me a damn thing. And I think that's the funny part. We don't tell each other about the roadblocks that's on the way. We don't tell each other about the hiccups. We don't tell each other about the mistakes that we made, because then it'll make us look, like weak. It'll make us look like we made mistakes. Where the ideal of you being, whatever it is almost infallible, immortal, like I do things, it's always at the apex degree. And that's the problem. Because if we're not teaching each other these mistakes, we're not, like, the next generation is doomed to just repeat them instead of making new mistakes and actually getting better and better and better. So I just thought that was fascinating as well, man. It's wild.
Yeah.
Just don't share enough.
No, and you hit the nail right on the head when you say we do not want to look weak. We do not want each other to know that we are going through something. We do not want to be vulnerable with each other. We do not want to be embarrassed in front of each other. But I think a big part of showing love is showing that vulnerability, showing the embarrassment you went through, showing the weaknesses you deal with. That way, the person that you're showing it to, hopefully they don't judge you, and instead they do what they can to not replicate what you've gone through. If she would have told you, like, look, when the market crashed, now I owe more on my house than it's worth. Now you have that knowledge to say, okay, I have to just make sure that I don't owe more on my house than it's worth. And so, but unfortunately you had to learn that on your own.
Oh yeah. I learned all things financial literacy. So she never told me this. But when I found out that this is the mistake that she made, I was like, oh, you didn't even spare me. Like, if I didn't actually do the research, I could have made the same mistake that you did, the same very mistake. But because I took it upon myself to learn and find this information online, do the digging, buy an affordable home, my home is way, it's valued at 260. And I think 269 now. And I think I bought it for 132,000. So, and it's only been like 5 years or so since I've had it. So it's amazing. So I'm looking at these situations and letting people know that, it's very possible for us to win, but we do also have to share when it doesn't work. And that's why I'm always big on trying to let people know that entrepreneurship sounds great, but a lot of entrepreneurs fail in 3 years. And by year 7, 90% fail. 90% by year 7. So there's barely few. And the average age for entrepreneurship is actually 51 plus. That's the average. That's the majority of people that still own homes or own jobs are that old. So there's just not a lot of wiggle room. And we're pushing people not to decide that, no, don't do college, do this, don't do this, do that. Like, you're forcing people down without telling them all the context, because they might be walking themselves into a landmine. And you never told them anything. And it's difficult, man. It's very hard, but it's why I kind of share all my journey from the very beginning. I didn't want to live in that level of fear. So I shared that, hey, I had this much more in debt, 125K worth of debt back in 2012. I showed them how I was grinding and making those moves. So I tell anybody now that if you've been following, you knew me since 2012 and you're not rich yet, that's on you. Because I did everything I could in my power to go on. If people go on my website, you see all the numbers tracking all the way back to 2012, all the details, how I spent money, how, where the money went, where the money kind of got better, so on and so forth. And now me and my wife, we're sitting on close to $700,000 worth of net worth. And it's only been so few years that we actually started this journey. Almost less than 10.
Oh man, you keep hitting all these great points. It's like everyone hears about the victories, but no one ever hears about the losses. No one hears about the 90% of, companies that fail. They only hear about the Apple, the Facebook, the YouTube, the Google, all of these, multi-billion-dollar companies that have blown up. And what you just shared about documenting from the beginning, from $125,000, 125K in debt to now over a $700,000 net worth. You started documenting that from the beginning. And I think, and I share that philosophy because that's why I started this podcast. I'm like, people aren't going to be able to relate to me when I have millions of dollars worth of real estate. They're going to be able to relate to me when I only have 2 rental properties, or when I have, $10,000 in retirement, or whatever that starting point is. So I might as well start now documenting it. But it seems as though, and I might be wrong, so please correct me if I'm wrong, no one cares about the journey that you have to go through in order to get to where you are, but they want to criticize the product of what that journey created. Do you find that in your story?
Oh yeah, like, well, when you're at the very beginning, people just look at you like, well, he don't have any money anyways, ha ha, in your face. So nobody follows you then. And then by the time you get to the point where you're a millionaire, they're gonna all say, oh, how lucky were you to do this, or is it all fell for you? Then it all worked out for you. So somewhere in between, I look at everybody, it's like, so this is why I document the journey, because I will show you that it's just not easy just to see the end product and think that is how it ended up. People really have to struggle in between. There are some changes that you have to make. And I don't even look at it as a sacrifice anymore. I look at it as just what we need to do to kind of move forward and become more and more adults. I think a lot of us are living like teenagers. We're living psychologically like teens. Like, we just want stuff. We want to buy stuff. We want to show out. But in truth, a lot of us, we just need to become an adult. And for me, like, me and my wife, we traveled in 2019 before the whole pandemic. That was great. We did 12 countries in 14 days. Like, it wasn't a sacrifice to get there. It wasn't this struggle of like, hey, let's have 5 different envelopes and we're saving this. It wasn't that at all. We didn't go at where we didn't want to go out anymore. I didn't go to happy hour because I just didn't like happy hour. As crazy as it is, I wasn't happy. Like, I did other things that brought me happiness, and it also brought me more of my money back. And with my money, I did more things that I wanted to be happy with, which was the travel. It was just something I always wanted to do, and when we did it, and it was amazing. Other people was like, oh, are you on a sabbatical? I'm like, I had to look it up. What is a sabbatical? When people talk like rich stuff, I'm like, what's a sabbatical? I mean, people just quit their jobs and just kind of like hang out. Like, no, I was on my 2-week vacation, and I just took all 2 weeks to ride out around, Europe. That's what I did. I planned it out. Me and my wife planned it out. We did it on Google Maps. We click. We look around and we planned it. We had a fantastic time. And everybody was like, oh, did you sacrifice to get there? I'm like, no, we didn't sacrifice at all. Eating at home for me is a lot more delicious than going out to a restaurant paying 100 stacks and the food is subpar. It's just sometimes you get to make a decision that really benefits you. And that's what we end up doing.
Yeah, but I think, everyone doesn't have the same idea of what it means to sacrifice. So what may not seem like a sacrifice to you, like, there are people that'll say, look, I really want to eat out twice a week, and not doing that is a sacrifice to them. But for you, that's like, what? That's that's literally the way I live. And so, for example, like, people are saying, oh, you have to have a car loan because you have to be able to drive a car. And you're like, what? Why don't you just save up? Like, why would you have to sacrifice not driving a 2020 instead of driving a 2010? So I think a lot of people see sacrifices as different. And the more sacrifices you do, the more you realize, like, oh, that really wasn't that bad. Like, was it really a sacrifice, not going out to eat? So
I think you're right about that. I think for everybody at different stages, they're going to perceive everything as a sacrifice. Hey, you tell you're a little kid right now, hey, you can't get on Wi-Fi, it's sacrilegious, man. They might just run into a wall. Like, who knows? Like, it's just crazy for everybody's perception. But in truth, is exactly what you said. Like, you have to find things that truly make you happy. And I don't think a lot of people know what those things are for themselves. I was gracious enough or grateful enough that I found that information out long before what makes me truly happy. So I think people are still struggling with that. People are still struggling to kind of like fit in. So a lot of things that they're buying is merely to fit in. Some people are going to, and I've talked to people going to brunches all the time or day parties, and they're really not happy. When you have a conversation with them, they're not happy, but they're there. They're trying to be there because they feel that this is what I need to do to fit in with the culture. Because if I'm not doing this, I'm not Black. If I'm not doing this, I'm not young adult. If I'm not doing it, I'm not a millennial. I'm not living the life. But in truth, some people just want to go home. Like, when you ever see some people at a party, and you're like, man, you just look like you just want to go home. Just go home.
That's me.
like you seem like you're enslaved to be here. Like, the best thing for you to do is just go home. There's nobody forcing you to do these things. And it's probably best that you stop trying to force it if you're not comfortable. And I think that's what I'm trying to challenge with the world, is the fact that some of these things that you're just not comfortable with. Going to the restaurants might not even be your thing, but you're doing it because, well, my friends expect me to be there. I got to be there. I got to do this. And one of those the things that I found out in the whole pandemic is that prior to that, people said, well, I couldn't save more than 8%. You know, I can't save more than, you know, whatever. Saving 7% is a lot, so on and so forth. But when the pandemic hit in April of 2020, savings rate went all the way up to 33%. Why did it go up that high? Because there is nothing else to do. So it comes down that, hey, turns out we all can save more, but because there's the abundance of things to do, we choose to just do the abundance of things. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And I think a great exercise that I think that the listeners should go through to kind of figure out what you're talking about, to figure out how to figure out what you value, is take what you do in life. If you go to Miami, you know, every month, or if you eat at this certain restaurant, take those things away. If your life drastically changes and you find yourself much less happy not doing these things or having these things, then you can add them back in. But what you will realize is once you remove things and the money's back in your pocket and it can be used elsewhere, sometimes you'll forget, like, oh man, we haven't been to the, like, for example, going to the movie theater. Me and my wife used to do it all the time.
Oh, every weekend.
Like, and we just stopped going. We'd order a movie like at home, or we'd watch, you know, something here, or, you know, we'd go to the drive-in maybe once a month. And we realized, like, we really don't, like, it's fine, it's fun, it's an experience, but we really don't value that as much. And so when you remove that thing from your budget, from your life, and you feel absolutely no different, that's how you realize, like, you don't value that as much as you thought you did.
Yeah. So, and I guess the challenge is to people to understand too, that sometimes people want to go out because they just like people. And that's probably what you value. You value community, you value like having conversations, so on and so forth. But I realized I couldn't have a conversation at loud places. So why should I don't value the loud places. I value my friends. I value having conversation with them. So I find like other ways. We used to just do like get-togethers at my house, you know, prior to the pandemic, and maybe a few times in between, just to kind of like, hey, you don't have to be at this other place paying all this money. We got the booze over here. You could be punch drunk in under 10 seconds and you haven't paid a dime. So we're trying to show people that the things that we're trying to go for, it's not just to buy stuff. As much more maybe we value community. Maybe we can value that friendship. Maybe we value, you know, getting together. Maybe we need to take a page out the Hispanic book and just kind of have more and more parties and hangouts together on Saturdays and Sundays. And you'll find that people become more they're mentally healthy, physically healthier, and just happier overall. And I think that's what I'm shooting for, being completely happy.
Yeah, that's phenomenal. Finding ways to get what you value in a cheaper way, I think that's always a win, man. That's a win all around. So, Lawrence, what ways have you found best to reach the people that don't understand how the situation they're in financially, how much danger they're in financially? Because I think it's really hard if someone hasn't reached that sick and tired of being sick and tired moment. You know, have you found a way to reach those people?
I'd be lying that I found a way. I really haven't. You know, I'm not one of the most popular people on social media, even though I personally think I dropped some bonfire stuff here. You know, check out the IG. I'm just saying. But ultimately, I think part of it, you're right. People have to get to a point where they're tired of, you know, being tired the entire time, and they're gonna look around and say, you know, I know a guy that's talk about finances. I know a guy that talks about financial literacy, and they reach out to me. Just like a friend of mine reached out to me yesterday, and he's starting his own business, and he's, you know, putting out the whole, you know, building the building and all that good stuff. And he was like, I'm trying to get more money. And I heard about this guy named the Approver online. He was literally about to commit bank fraud. But because he knew me, and it's subconscious says, well, I've seen this guy post consistently for years on years on years. I'm going to call him and I'm going to find out what's going on. And lo and behold, yeah, he was about to commit bank fraud. A lot of people, I don't want you to get to that point where you're about to just click on the dime and then the IRS hits you. I don't want you to get to that point, but I do want you to think. I do want you to be challenged. I do want you to know by, you know, definition of being surrounded by the right people that you have access to this information. Everybody could go on Google for financial literacy, but they generally don't. Everybody could go on YouTube to get a whole dose of really good content. And there's some bad ones, but there's a whole bunch of good content, even podcasters yourself, like it exists, but people generally don't. And it's troubling, but I think a lot of people will find out when they're 40. I think that's when it hits, when they're not 45, when it starts realizing that, hey, they got to take care of their parents that have less savings, and they literally have to help out their parents to the tune of $2 or $3 grand per month. When that hits, that becomes real. That's when they want to know. But for a lot of the younger people, I used to go to the middle schools, elementary school, talk about financial literacy, not at the high level, but at their level, which makes a lot of sense. I used to volunteer before the pandemic at JA Academy, Junior Achievement Academy. It's available in different areas, and they literally do financial literacy for high school, middle school, and elementary school students. It's an amazing program. On top of that, I used to go to the colleges wherever I can, wherever friends. If I ever get an invite, I just show up. I do the best that I can. I also try to use analogies that make sense. One of my buddies, he loves sports. I use sports analogies as to what exactly is investing. Hey, that's the 2-point shot. That's just a regular investment that you're looking at what. Maybe a mid cap or something like that 3-point range. You're looking at a long shot. You're looking at maybe emerging markets, so on and so forth. I try to use any analogy that's going to help me connect with a person to make it real for them. But ultimately, is walking the path that's the best example. It's until maybe a year after I talked to after years of talking with my best friends about this stuff, and they never pay attention. One year, he actually decided to follow the journey, and he found out that he made an additional $20,000 worth on his investments. When you make that money, it starts to click. This actually can work, versus that this is theoretical, this is out there, this is not for me. No, this is for you. This is all your money. This is all you. So I don't know if it helps. I don't know if there's a shortcut to it, but it's something to be said about the entire community pivoting and realizing our true priorities. And if that priority is financial literacy, then we'll make it. We made chicken with Popeye's chickens hot. It was just a chicken sandwich. That's all it is. People are dying to get the chicken sandwich. We can make anything hot, but we have to want to do this. We have to want to be wealthy and healthy as well.
So, that's a great segue into the next question I had, which I know the answer, but I want to talk about it because I think people, when we answer this question, people think we're being disingenuous. Ooh, right?
What kind of question is this?
Why do you care? Why do you care that other people get financial literacy? Because at the end of the day, you and your family are going to become millionaires. Whether these people follow you or not, whether they take your advice, whether they absorb any of your content, you and your family are going to be good. And I want to say this as humbly as possible, but me and my family are going to be good too. We are going to continue investing in real estate. We are going to become multimillionaires as long as we stick to this path. I am certain of it because we save so much. So why do you care if other people get the same thing?
Ooh, yeah. I think I asked that. Well, I told my wife these questions that she read one of them. She's like, hey, how would you answer this? She's like, well, you don't care. I'm like, whoa. This is exactly why we don't put you on camera. You don't do this. It's she's a little wild, it's hilarious. But for me, I actually do care. The reason I care is because of what we talked about earlier. In our entire coded in our DNA, Black people care about each other. That's why that's why when Black guys are walking down the street together and they kind of nod, it's not a nod of disingenuousness. It's a nod because I understand who you are and he understands who I am. That's why we nod. It has nothing to do with anything else. It's every time that we get around with each other, there's a lot of love, there's a lot of care, there's a lot of hugs. And we definitely do want to see people wealthy because that's going to get the families back together again. It's going to stop infighting a lot, especially between siblings. It's going to stop infighting between friends. The more wealthy we all become, the better our communities are, the safer they are, the more prosperous they are, the more we could build and bring joy to the world. No matter what it is, I don't want Black people to pivot to the point where they're not themselves. I don't think that's what we're trying to say and do here. Is the fact that we just need to be in line with constructing a better future for ourselves. And I think that matters to me more than anything else. in the end of the day, like years from now, when I'm a multimillionaire, maybe nobody can relate to me. Maybe I won't be able to explain to somebody how to start, from scratch anymore. But from whatever I've done right now, they could actually go all the way back in time, read every single post, read every single like blog post that I have on our website that chronicles this journey. And they could copy it verbatim if they needed to, or even learn from it and adapt it. And they'll find that the journey is not even about money. It's about being happy and about recouping your own time. I think we're enslaved to the stuff we buy. We're enslaved to the lifestyle we're trying to live and the image we're trying to project and protect. To quote Will Smith, out here trying to protect something. You ain't protecting nothing. It's all ego. It's all your image, and that really wrecks your mind. And if we're in a better space as a Black community, we'll realize that it's just not that serious. And I think that's what I was trying to do. I want to make sure people are happy and they're living real lives, not just like buying homes they could barely clean, they could barely afford, buying cars that just to, and the reason we buy like nice cars too, I found out like half of them, you're doing it to make the other Black person feel bad. Is that even a motive? is that not psychologically flawed? Like, why would you buy something to stunt on others? What is the point of that? Like, do you want people to just feel bad internally? That's not me. Me and my wife, we drive a 2009 Nissan Versa. We're going to drive that thing, after we're millionaires. We're going to drive that thing until we get a hybrid because of tax purposes. And that's about it. But we're not here to stunt on people. I don't care to stunt on people. That's why my hat is a regular hat. My shirt is a funny shirt. And I keep it moving.
Yeah. And it's like, so a lot of people say money doesn't buy happiness, but then I think about this.
It does.
Think about it. When you can live in a house and all your kids get their own room, when you can go to the grocery store and you can get whatever you want put into the buggy, when you have the opportunity to give more money than someone has ever even made in a month, like that is where happiness comes from. So when people say money doesn't buy happiness, I mean, they obviously haven't given away enough money to
oh no, they haven't been poor enough to know that money does buy happiness. So like, you can be very unhappy and poor.
Yeah, and I will say this: you can be happy and be absolutely miserable, but it's a lot. I would rather cry in a Bentley than in a shopping cart. So, but yeah, I mean, a lot of people say like, "Why, James? Why do you care? Like, what? Like, it's not going to affect you in any way," and they're absolutely right. But if I can give someone that feeling, the feeling that I have when I can go to the grocery store and swipe my card and not have to worry about a decline, the happiness I get realizing that my electricity is never going to be shut off, the happiness that I feel when a tire blows on my car and all I have to do is just put on a spare, drive, go get a new tire, and it's not the end of the world. That is the happiness I want everyone to be able to feel. Because again, just like you alluded to, when everyone is happier, I mean, the community thrives and it just makes the world a better place, man. It really does.
Yeah, I think, oh man, you hit on the nose. The idea of just kind of really, even in my retirement, what I plan to do is actually help, I guess, a church family or whatever buy like a small cafe. You know why? Because I kind of like to go to cafes in the morning. Maybe that's just for me, but ultimately I want to see that in the community because cafes are nice, bakeries are beautiful. It's just the way I love them. So I want to be able to give that to people. I want to see somebody that's fledgling and trying to do different things. Maybe it is kind of like a small business. Maybe it's a podcast. Maybe it's like a YouTube page. I'll be like, hey, here's 10 grand and make it happen and just walk away. And to be in a space to do that, to me, is the ultimate sign of giving. Like, I'd rather structure my money in a way that create more money and more wealth in my lifetime. And on top of that, I could use that money to help others, create the same. And to your point, it's 100% correct to see that, to know that that person is helping themselves. They're becoming healthier and happier, and they're just like cheering for themselves. And then they build families that are healthier and happier too. You could tell later on, they probably never even attribute their success to you, but there was a point in time when they heard this conversation from you. They're like, you know what? That changed my life. That changed my perspective. And I think that matters.
Absolutely, man. And it really only takes one. Like, it only takes one time where you hear someone say, wow, I never thought of it that way. That's enough to trigger the change in some people. So that's why I always say, like, if someone listens to one episode of my podcast and they get one thing and it changes their life for the better, all the time I put into this is 100% worth it. And even if I'm not seeing the products of my seeds today, because the podcast is still new, in 30 years, whether I see them or not, the growth is going to be there.
Yeah. And hey, people, do not skip on giving reviews. I saw you guys. Give them the Apple reviews. Give them the Apple reviews.
I appreciate
Click on that sucker.
So Lawrence, we talked about all these, kind of issues with Black people, financial literacy, financial management, and all the problems that we are currently facing. Where do we begin to bridge the gap? Where do we begin to see that median income going up, the poverty rate in Black community going lower? Because I saw one of your posts, which was an amazing post, that the top paying careers, and they're all like engineering college degrees, like chemical, aerospace, computer, electrical, mechanical. Do you think that's where we need to start, or where do you think that the starting line looks like to make the change?
Man, the starting line, I guess the starting line starts with anybody, because every kid is, interestingly enough, a blank slate. Like, most kids don't know, they don't have any rational understanding of what racism is. You ask a 3-year-old, they have no idea. 4-year-old, they have no idea. Like 5, like there's a point in time where we switch and the older generation tells them what it is. The older generation tells people, who they're gonna be, what they're gonna be, what they're gonna be good at. Because there's a kid right now that's like 5 years old. It's like, hey, I'm gonna be an astronaut. But there's a parent sitting there, you're not. There's a lot of that going on in our community. A lot of people just limiting our kids to being who we are or experience life the way we have experienced it, whereas their world's going to be completely different. So I personally don't know if engineering is the end all be all for the next generation, as much that we do need to focus and ensure that our kids are going to school, ensure that our kids are being educated, if not pushing for school to be even 6 days out the week. I don't think it should just be 5 days, honestly, especially in the poorer communities where there's nothing at home anyways. What is the point of keeping the kid at home, not progressing, not growing, not doing anything? You may as well toss them in school for the extra day. And a lot of teachers will tell you they need these extra days. The kids need to be pushed. They need to understand. I think that's where it starts with our true sacrifice to say that, hey, whatever happened to us is one thing, but to gear these kids up to compete globally is very important. Mentoring them throughout the process from high school before they get to college, or before they switch up to whatever post high school direction that they go into, they need the mentors. We don't talk enough about the type of mentors that really understand different perspectives of society. There's some mentors right now, like at the school counselor saying that you shouldn't go to the military. I'm like, maybe that counselor never went to the military, but there's other military people that have done phenomenally with their lives, pre and post military, that, hey, they'll tell you that it was a good idea for them. So we need to have more broad approaches where the community comes into the school system and impart their knowledge onto the kids. If maybe the 6th day is just a community day where we just bring in different people, like every time for the entirety of the day. Like, hey, we're gonna bring in an engineer, or we're gonna bring in an accountant. We're gonna bring in a doctor. We're gonna run through these scenarios. That way, we're challenging kids to change. On top of that, go ahead, man. No, go ahead.
Well, I was gonna ask you a question on that, because I'm interested in what you're saying. So you suggest that we have more schooling, and to a certain degree, I agree with that. But do you think that we should focus on the quality of the education more before we add more education? Or because the reason I asked that is because the quality of education I got was pretty poor. In my opinion.
I went to Florida. Come on, man.
It's but seriously though, like my high school education, most of it was garbage. The teachers didn't want to be there. The students didn't want to be there. So it was, I really don't like to use the word toxic because, it's super underplayed, but it just wasn't an environment that breeds success. It was kind of just like a check of the box type of thing. So when you say, send them to school a day, one more day a week, I kind of like,
Well, yeah, I see what you're saying. I think that's why that the caveat is that the community needs to be more active and engaged in it. I don't think the community is. I don't think a lot of parents really are. They're kind of like, I'm gonna send my kids to school. I'm gonna let that rock out, and I'm gonna leave. It is what it is. And I think that's the problem. When we start engaging the community more, then the community starts asking questions like, well, what do you do in the regular school day? Why are the kids learning? I found out that my cousin, who was 15 at the time, did not know how to type. Did not know how to type. But I mean, did not know. I asked her, type your name. And I watched her do it. And I was like, what the hell is this? Like, she couldn't type her name. She couldn't type words on the keyboard. And I thought to myself, like, she's not going to make it. Like, whatever is the next step, like, I type all the time. Everything I do is typing. Like, you go to college, everything you do is typing. There's written work, there's da. Like, she didn't know how to do that. Like, so you mean to tell me at this, in 2020, she was doing this? That's the problem. This is a whole hell of a problem. And the only way we find out is by the community getting more engaged to see what the end product is going to be for the next generation. If we're not engaged, we don't know what's going on. We assume that it's getting taken care of. We assume that these kids are learning what they need to move on to the next level. But you do have to realize the people that have been doing well and done better for themselves has moved away from said communities. And we need to bring them back in, even at the almost like a consultation, coming in for the speaking, whatever, then they'll find out more and they'll want to get more involved. They want to add more money to it. They're like, hey, can we buy a pizza party? Can we do this for the weekend? Whatever it is, let's get more involved. And hopefully we're changing the language of education. In the end of the day, that's what financial literacy is. If people do not want to engage and become more knowledgeable, like you said, the high school kids, I don't want to be there. If they don't want to be there, that's because it's not engaging enough. And we need to make all the curriculum more engaging.
So when you're talking about this, it seems as though you're targeting more like the career aspect being added back into the school, whether it's police officers, engineers, firefighters, military personnel coming in, giving the education added to the schools. And I 100% agree, bringing trades back to the schools, automotive, carpentry, these things, like the skills to pay the bills back into the schools. I think that is an awesome aspect. I think that should be done. But what do you think about financial literacy? Do you think financial literacy, learning about taxes, learning about insurance, learning about, all the things, investing, do you think that should be added back into the high school? Do you think that's the answer?
I think recently the state of Florida actually enacted something that allows that the financial literacy is going to be in the high school from now. And there's a few other states that's been doing that, probably a total of 7 states that are incorporating financial literacy into the curriculum. And I guess they're really trying to say that high school students need to pass a test before they, kind of part of their high school phase to get to the next level to graduate as well. So it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. But ultimately, a problem we have is a lot of teachers themselves are not financially literate. So we're asking a group of teachers that also struggle with their money to teach about financial literacy, of which they don't know nothing about. Ain't it kind of weird? So in essence, we have a bigger fish to fry. But I think part of what I've learned about financial literacy is that we've always been learning financial literacy the entire time. Reading comprehension, that's financial literacy. Math, arithmetics, geometry, even algebra is a form of financial literacy. That's what investing is all about. That's how you do money management. How much money do I have left in order to me to make this work? So on and so forth. These are things that we've always talked about, but I think as a society, we've made it like, I didn't learn financial literacy growing up. No, you did, but you learned a lot of things in high school that you weren't there psychologically for. Like you said this before, like a lot of kids didn't want to be in the class, and some classes were actually pretty good. And I was learning some of these finer points, but nobody cared to learn. We were just basically a community or a culture that goes beyond just Black culture, but the American culture that does not appreciate learning and becoming knowledgeable. And that's the difference. I grew up in Haiti where people were like, we have to pay for school for everything. So you can't just go to school and just be lackadaisical. We had to recite their entire history from beginning to end, like the entire book. every book itself, we had to make sure that it was in good condition so we can actually give over to somebody else. So every book almost had to be damn near perfect. But everything that you learn is something that you learn for yourself. And there was a challenge in the classroom, like, hey, who's the smartest? That's what it is. Who's better at this? Who's better at that? And there was a challenge every day. There was a competition based off just learning, because that's just the philosophy of how we learn overseas. But in the American system, you don't really learn to learn. You learn for the moment so you could pass the test. You learn for a moment so you could pass this quiz. But after that, you blank it out, as if you can't string these things along and create new forms of understanding, new forms of knowledge. That is the definition of rhyming or rapping. I'm like, the idea that you string along concepts or whatever it is, you know what that is? That's English 101. That's literature 101. That's you becoming resourceful. But we're not teaching people what's going on in everybody's minds. So even a teacher that was an English teacher should be able to be like, hey, did you hear this rap song? Because a lot of kids listen to rap, right? Because let's break it down. What does this mean? Obviously you're not bringing the most, bad version of rap out here, but you bring the good stuff. But you kind of like, you're breaking it apart. Like, what's the structure? So you could say, this is what poetry is. And then you link it back to what old school poetry was, Shakespeare. How does he construct his sonnets? So all of these things exist. It's just that we're not excited enough. We're not allowing people the range to be as involved and energized to teach these things, and also saying that you could string these things along to create a new subject. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. That's phenomenal. And I did hear about Florida passing, because I went to school in Florida. I went to high school. And
Florida, terrible, terrible education.
I had a personal finance class in high school, and and it wasn't that long ago. It was 9 years ago, 8 years ago.
Oh, sweet. I didn't even know that you had that. What part of Florida were you from?
Jacksonville, Florida. It's North Florida.
Oh, Duval. Come on.
Duval.
Yeah. I'm like, it's Jacksonville, Florida. Like, you made Jacksonville people look bad right now. Okay.
Look, man, I left for a reason. But I will say, I don't remember a single thing from that class. And I think that goes back to the quality of the education needs to be improved in order for these things to stick. Like, I remember how to do the Pythagorean theorem because I had to do it 100 times, but I strongly, I cannot remember a single thing from the personal finance class. It was all online. It was just a course you had to click through, and it was just a check in the box. It was a check to graduate for us. And I think if the quality of the education would have been better, which hopefully it will now that it's required statewide.
We hope.
Yeah, hopefully but we have to start somewhere. I think making it a requirement is a start. So, Lawrence, let's go ahead and go. What are some of your short-term money goals that you hope to accomplish within the next 6 months to a year?
Next 6 months, my short-term money goals is to, close out the year with at least $850,000 worth of net worth. That's the goal. And it's kind of, we'll see, because the market goes up and down, and I have to struggle through it. But that's one of my short-term money goals. And as far as a household, one of our money goals is to travel more. And then we already purchased our tickets, but we just, kind of like, now it's the point where we knock it out and get it through. And finally, in a year or so, I think that's hitting that $1 million mark is going to be pretty powerful for us, because then it's kind of like that check mark I personally always wanted. So I can say that we've made it and we've done it. I write a little bit more blogs about that. It is what it is. And hopefully I start writing more ebooks and getting to the position where I end up writing my book. That's my short-term money goals, if that makes any.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So what are some of your long-term goals for your finances that you hope to accomplish within the next 5 to 10 years? And what does the finish line look like for you?
So the next 5 to 10 years, the 5-year mark, I do want to purchase, or me and my wife want to purchase a family home, like the forever home, whatever we want to call that one. On top of that, turn this current location into another rental. So that's going to be good for us in the next 5 years, having babies, so on and so forth. But the next 10 years or so, we'll be rounding out the ending point where we're going to be we'll definitely be financially independent, but we're going to be considering the whole retire early. So we're retiring in about like 12 years. So I'm just going to call it, yeah, it's close enough. Around that time, I'm ready to clock out anyways. And from that point on, that's where we start the next adventure. So the finish line for me and my wife is to really be, to be more purposeful with my time. Because I wanted to prove to everybody else that it's possible to become a millionaire in less than 20 years. And I've written down an entire plan. I made that available on my website. It's free for anybody to grab. It incorporates the financial order of operations, which I think is very important in this day and age. And at the same time, I wanted to show that to people in 20 years, but it turns out it took me like 10 years. I was like, oh, we could be millionaires at 20. Like, no, you could be millionaires 10, depending how much money you're bringing in, how much effort you're putting towards it. And it can happen for pretty much a lot of people. Even if it's 12, 15 years, you're better off than a lot of people never, become millionaires at all or retiring when they're 70, which is why I'm constantly trying to tell people to avoid. My finish line is to travel abroad. We're going to actually purchase either a home in Brazil or in Lisbon. Well, I would say Portugal, but Lisbon is likely the space we're going to be in. So it's either one or the other. We're going to have to forcibly go back to speaking Portuguese, but that's what we're going to do. And on top of that, like I said before, help other people create small businesses, either it be local coffee shops, if I need to help, maybe even update barbershops, because I think there's a lot of different barbers that are great people, but maybe the barbershop itself need a better aesthetic. I'm the kind of person that sees these things and I don't mind investing in somebody or helping them out, giving capital investments so it could change the ambiance, so they could give them more passion to what they do. Because you could see people working so hard, but you could tell that they likely don't even have the extra, bandwidth to figure out these other things. But I want to be able to help them out in that sense. Books I would even say that cover that, the E-Myth. There's a book called the E-Myth. It's important. It talks about people just being able to be very much like they know their skill, but they might not be business owners. Like you got to teach them that. We got to help them scale up so they could create more money. So therefore helping out their family and ultimately helping out the community. So that's my goal.
No, I love that. And of course, guys, he just mentioned the E-Myth, great book. I'm going to link that down in the show notes below. I highly suggest if you even blink and think you want to be an entrepreneur, it is a great book to read. It definitely changed my perspective on a lot of things. And a couple of things you said, like there's always those people that are like, oh, why do you want to become a millionaire? A million isn't even a lot of money. And they're like, you don't even have a million. So it's more than
they broke.
Yeah. So it's like, what is the alternative, right? Like if I don't become a millionaire, what is the alternative? I just work forever. Like, so having a million, even if it's not your end goal, the person who is saying that, it's more than what most will ever get. And when it goes back to your barbershop example, there's a saying, it's like they're doing the right thing in the wrong place. So if you're just a world-class barber, but your environment just isn't tailored to represent that, then that's where you can make the changes. But Lawrence, we're going to transition into the final questions of the podcast. And of course, I ask these questions to every single guest that come on. Are you ready?
Oh, always ready, man. Always ready. Always ready. Boring. Right. Let's go.
Question number 1. Everyone has their own definition of what it means to have financial peace. What is your definition?
Oh, man. My definition of financial peace is basically waking up in a bed, having a home, a roof over my head, and also having a pantry full of food. Anytime I have all those things, I could cook, I could bring friends around, I could entertain. I would say entertain in the negative way, but entertain people just like, yo, come through. So you could lay your hat down. And that's my definition of financial peace. I do welcome the future where I could say, hey, you and your family, come to Brazil, man, just hang out. Like, so you don't have to pay for the lodging, so you could actually get to enjoy and buy more food, enjoy more like the area of Rio or something like that, and check it out. So you could really kind of like, we could work together as a community.
So would you say you have financial peace right now?
Oh, hell yeah, I do. Love it. Like I wake up very comfortable all the time, very happy, very satiated.
That's phenomenal, man. Question number 2. If there are listeners out there that want to start building wealth and they have no clue where to get started, what would you tell them?
For anybody that's doing that, I would say, and I say it to everybody, this weekend or even this week, just sit down for maybe an hour or so, write down your goals, your life strategy. I think some people think it's always about the money, about the dollars, but in truth, it's about the plans that you have and your why in your life and your purpose. That's how you construct the dream. First, you have to have the dream. You have to like write it down. You got to figure out what the pieces are. You take that inventory. And after that, I would say definitely double down and figure out how much money is coming in and how much money going out. 9 times out of 10, people that are struggling with money, they have no concepts of what's going in and out. And that's the problem. You can get on mint.com, it's free. You'll see it, you track it for a while, and you start understanding where your money is. After that, I'll say for a lot of people that are struggling with credit card debt, that's the first thing you tackle. You decide at that point, if you have a job and the job offers a 401k, 403b, or 457b, however one of those are, you can always take the match if they have a match. And after that, you start paying down more money in your credit card debt, high interest credit card debt. That's the first thing. It sounds mundane. It sounds kind of silly. That's basically money back in your pocket. And there's no other place you could get 20% return per month, like guaranteed return, besides just knocking that out. On top of that, afterwards, when that's said and done, you would go back to maximize your 401k, 403b, 457b. You get in the traditional Roth IRA, you get in the HSA. That combination alone for a single person making any amount of money, ultimately, if you make more, that's better. But for a single person, that's around $30,000 tax deferred per year that you can invest in yourself. That tax deferment is like $2,500 a month. In around like 12 years, you'll be a millionaire. If you're a married couple, that's 60 grand. You could put away tax deferred and you'll be a millionaire even faster. And then you'll also get to live your life even better. So it depends on how you're living.
You make it sound too easy, man.
Because it is easy, my friend. It's easy. Even if you're
it's
not
simple.
Like, if you do not have a lot of money, I think that's like, I don't have $30,000. Hey, I don't even care if you do or don't. But if you have 6 grand or even $500 per month, you could be a millionaire in 30 years. Just by investing in the traditional Roth IRA. If you want a traditional, safety on tax. If you want a Roth IRA, it'll basically be tax-free. There are provisions, there are differences, but ultimately that amount of money, $500 a month, will make you a millionaire in 30 years.
Yes, that's it. And I did the math on episode 2. If you guys don't believe me,
that's it.
Compound interest.
That's all it is. Like if it's never been that simple, it doesn't make any sense anymore. Like just do that and you'll be fine.
All right, question number 3, Lawrence. If there's one thing you could advise everyone to avoid doing to build wealth, what would that be?
Whoa, the only thing that comes to mind is to don't double down on somebody else's journey as if it's your own. By that, I mean, when I got into financial literacy, I did not find like an influencer first. That wasn't my thing. I literally studied financial literacy from like the Google words, all that stuff, blah, 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 figuring out the compounding interest. And then I read different books, but I didn't live for those books. Yeah, Robert Kiyosaki wrote a book, or wrote multiple books. Yes, he was wealthy in his time in his own right. And a lot of those books are amazing. But I'm not going to say, everything that he did is going to be exact blueprint that I copy for myself. Some people follow Dave Ramsey method to the day that they die. It might not, it's good information, but it might not be the information that you need. So be flexible with yourself, that you're not using any one particular thing as almost like your Bible, like or written in stone. Everybody's direction in life is going to vary, is going to be different. You do not have to be just real estate to be rich. You don't have to be just a small business entrepreneur to be rich. You don't have to be just an investor or day trader to be rich. You can even be a 9-to-5 person and be rich, or you could be all 4 or 5 of them at one time. You could be the 9-to-5 worker that has a small business, that owns real estate, that invests, and that also does more on the side. Like it's all these things are available to you. So not pigeonhole yourself to one doctrine. Do not be that person.
Yeah, and take what you want, leave what you don't. I mean, that's what I do with Dave Ramsey. I do it with Grant Cardone. I do it with everybody, right? Like no one, there's no one person who's 100% right. And even with this conversation, even with this podcast, like there are some things I might say that work for me that do not work for you guys. And that is perfectly fine. But just take what you leave. Like I know I give out at least, I know I put out at least one good thing that somebody can take in all of my episodes. So
There's a guy that has a podcast, Andy Hill. He has the Married Kids and Money podcast. And it's interesting when you listen to him over time, like he actually switches up from like strategy to strategy. And then he finds out that that's what he's been doing all this time. Like he first was Dave Ramsey to the day he died. And he was like, well, it worked for him. It made sense. He got out of his job, made a lot of great money. Then he realized, well, he's going to switch over to this other one, the FIRE movement. And then now he's like, well, I'm not really FIRE like that. And I'm not switching over to Coast FIRE movement. And then you can see somebody's journey of changing. And I think in this society, we don't allow people to change enough, and we don't allow ourselves to change. So you don't have to be tied into one's philosophy.
Yeah, it's important to evolve. If you are the same person you were 5 years ago, you're doing something wrong. So, question number 4, Lawrence. If there was someone out there that doesn't believe they can reach financial peace due to their age, their race, religion, sexual orientation, etc., what would you say to change their mind?
Nothing. Like, if I had to be honest, at first I would joke around them just like I just did now, like tell them like, your mind is a very powerful tool. It could tell you exactly what you need to do, or it could actually help you to kind of along your way. That's what your mind does. We exist in a three corporeal concept, being your mind, your body, and your spirit, right? No matter who you are, that's really what it comes down to. Your mind operates as like a manager, your spirit is the CEO, and your body is just a worker. That's all it does. So if you tell your mind that you can't do it, then your mind will be like, all right, cool, it is what it is. But if you tell your mind that you can do it, your mind will find ways to kind of evolve and incorporate different ideas and concepts. So I'll tell anybody that's struggling with changing their minds, I would say change your outlook. Why do you want to be financially free? Why do you want to find peace? It does, for some people, like you said before, it doesn't mean that you have a big home. Maybe it's just that, hey, I like to go take walks with my friend every day. That's financial peace. If you could do that without struggling, that's financial peace. I want to be able to see my grandmother, every other weekend because she lives like maybe an hour away. That's financial peace. If that's what you're into, that's what you're into. So I wouldn't say work against yourself, but create systems that's going to work for you and allow your money to work more for you in the long run, and you'll be fine. It doesn't have to be a big car. It doesn't have to be a big house. It doesn't have to be, fancy threads. It could just be you.
Man, I couldn't have said it better myself, man. I really couldn't. Lawrence, this was such an amazing interview, man. I really think the listeners are going to get so much valuable information from all the things that we talked about. And hopefully this will help the movement for our community to build wealth long-term and, get that median income up and get that poverty rate down. Because if we can help at least one person with this conversation, I think it's 100% worth it. So Lawrence, where can people find out more about you?
One, thanks again for even having me at this podcast. I think it was a very interesting conversation. Sometimes people kind of keep things shorter, but this conversation went on, and I think that's where we need to excel at sharing our, anything that we have so that somebody could grab. So I know this is going to make an impact for more than just one person. I'm banking on 5. maybe I'm overdoing it, but 5 is what I'm shooting for here. Right. So on top of that, where people could find me, you can find me on IG most of the time. I post daily, by like 3 times a day, financial literacy concepts and so on and so forth, on the Neighborhood Finance Guy on IG. So that's the entire word, the Neighborhood Finance Guy. You can find it there. On top of that, you can find me on my website called guess it again, the Neighborhood Finance Guy, the entire word all the way through. And I have over 250 written blogs, as well as maybe 70 free resources, literally free resources that you can use, download, play, interact with, so on and so forth. And I know some people see it, and I know a lot of people in our community don't. And it's unfortunate because a lot of these things can really make you a lot of money and a lot of great value. It can make you wealthy, not just in the money aspect, but also in the way that you think about your life, the way that you interact with others, the way that you really conceptualize your own purpose. So that's my goal. You can find me in those things. And on top of that, I almost forgot. We did launch a podcast called The Financial Griot. So we're definitely going to want you to be on there at one day when we actually get our stuff together. Ultimately, we talk about financial literacy, but we also talk about stories that really impact us on a day-to-day level, because Black people are more than just money. We're a collective of our stories, the collective of our journeys, and our conversations do matter. And I think that's what we need to get back into.
Absolutely, guys. And of course, you guys don't have to go very far. I'm going to have this Instagram, website, and a link to his podcast in the show notes below where you guys can find it and reach out to him, man. Lawrence, like I said, this has been such an amazing, amazing conversation. And hopefully, once you hit that millionaire mark, I want to bring you back on.
Oh, no, it's happening next year, man. It's definitely happening next year.
Yeah, like, you're coming back.
Hey, I'm coming back, but I'm like, man, I'm better now. I'm wearing a fur coat. It's like in the summertime. You're like, what's going on? I'm gonna have glasses on. Like, I can't talk to you. Talk to my secretary.
Yes, sir. You got speak to my assistant.
Okay? You got to step it up. You just can't just call me anymore. Like, you can't just send me a message. What do you think this is? I'm blue check now. I'm out.
Well, man, I really appreciate you coming on, and yeah, this is going to be awesome. And I can't thank you enough for coming on. This conversation has been amazing, but that's all. We're going to wrap it up there, guys. I really appreciate you guys listening. And Lawrence, I hope you have a blessed rest of your day, man.
Oh, amazing, man. You guys too. And everybody that's listening, thank you for listening, and share, comment, subscribe, and like, and all that good stuff. Leave the reviews. For God's sakes, leave the reviews.
Like, leave the review. Y'all heard it first.
5 stars, man. Come on, 4 stars. Give me something.
All right, later, man.
All right, peace.
And guys, that was my interview with the neighborhood finance guy, Lawrence. As I told you guys, we really broke it down. We got into the deep numbers and we uncovered the real truth, right? Black people have the highest poverty rate. We have the lowest median income. These are things that we can statistically track. Now, are we 100% right on why these things happen? We don't know. These are just guesses, right? But we need to start somewhere in trying to diagnose the problem. And of course, it's very easy to look back and say, oh, slavery was the problem and all these other systemic racism. And those are very easy things to say, but we're going way further than just that, right? We're done making the excuses on why we cannot generate generational wealth. Therefore, yeah, I really hope that you guys got a lot of value out of it because, again, this conversation, it needed to be had. And I think Lawrence was the absolute perfect guest to have the conversation with. So I really hope you guys enjoyed. With that being said, guys, as I always remind you, please, please, please leave a rating on the podcast wherever you are listening. Okay, let me know what you think. You can follow me on all of our social medias. It's just Gen Z Money wherever. Okay, so I really appreciate that. If you guys want to subscribe to our YouTube channel, if you can watch the interview, you can actually watch the video and not just listen. You guys can find us there at Gen Z Money. And of course, I do offer financial coaching sessions. I offer free consultations over the phone, and you can schedule that down in the show notes on my Calendly, and all of our social media and everything can be found. And of course, Lawrence's social medias and things will be found in the show notes too for you guys to enjoy. But I'm going to get up out of here, guys. I'm your host, James Bowman. And always remember, you're only as secure as your ability to perform. So spend your life accumulating assets that can perform for you. Later, guys.